certain amount in common. When I think of adjectives to describe the speaker of Lawrence Joseph's poems, these tend to be the same adjectives that describe tools that should be operated with caution and never by children. Sharp, blunt, heavy, incisive, powerful, fast, lofty. Lofty? Yes, lofty is dangerous. More people end up in the ER falling off ladders than from any other household accident. But to point, these adjectives, of course, could as readily be applied to Cate Marvin's speaker. As real humans, both Cate and Lawrence, as Larry, are funny and quick to laugh. As poets, when they're serious, they're dead serious. Both have poetic imaginations that periodically deposit a severed body part into a poem. Both are poets who have spent a long time in New York, but interestingly have written poems that have tended to be absent the mannerisms most associated with the New York school and its legacy. Before Lawrence Joseph clicks mute on me, I'll say that Schuyler's mannerisms are not the first to pop to mind when one thinks of the New York school. Whimsical, flippant, insouciant, not Lawrence Joseph, not Cate Marvin. The poems of both are on the cooked side of the raw, cooked dialectic, which is a great way not to make people sick. In any event, our first poet tonight, Cate Marvin, is without question one of the defining voices of her generation. She's the author of 3 previous collections, Oracle, Fragment of the Head of a Queen, and World's Tallest Disaster. Her 4th book, Event Horizon, is forthcoming from Copper Canyon in spring 2022. In her time, she's been a Guggenheim Fellow, a Whiting Award recipient, and a Kate Tufts Discovery Prize winner. She's also been a marvelous citizen of poetry. She edited with Michael Dumanis the definitive anthology of her generation, Legitimate Dangers. She played a huge role in leveling the publication playing field for female poets. She's also a tenured professor and a loving mother. And the beauty of her poetics is that this hyper-responsible human being, this person who makes terrifyingly long to-do lists and then does them, is not the speaker of her poems. In rereading Oracle last night, hold it up, Kate's speaker gave me a kind of fresh baptism in the power of the speaker, which is fitting as she's the one years ago who clued me into what can be unlocked only by an I who isn't exactly I. Poetry, as you've all noticed, is having a very autobiographical moment. Most poems I see on the dailies and through the social media tend to invite a complete conflation of flesh and blood author and poetic speaker. These 21st century author-speaker conflations tend not to be transgressive, classically confessional speakers. Instead, they tend to be transgressed against. What happens then is a reader delivers an amount of sympathy commensurate with the possibility that the poet has suffered exactly as the speaker has. While this is good for certain poets, or at least the CVs of certain poets, it isn't good for the art. Exhilarating lines like, I dislike everything in your refrigerator, or I was duplicitous as a Canadian dime, or mortification, I've known your corpse lips, I've undone your pants, reached in to make balloon animals, can only be written by a poet who utilizes the psychic apparatus of a speaker. I'm very excited for Kate's newest book. She's a fastidious maker, and one can think of her poems as secretly being classifiable as concrete poems in the tradition of Herbert or May Swenson in iconographs, which is to say that the visual appearance of the language on the page is a major concern throughout the composition process. Kate's poems also sing, which I should now let them commence doing. Let's give a warm visual appearance of applause to Cate Marvin. Happy to have her back in KGB, whatever the form.
Thank you, Matt. It's so wonderful to see you and Chelsea. And this is, Matt invited me to read about a week ago, and I was thrilled to death to be given the opportunity to read with Larry Joseph, who I consider a dear friend and kind of like a sort of, he's like a spirit to me in some way, like a poetry spirit. I know he might recoil at me saying that, but I met him at a KGB reading. We had martinis and we immediately hit it off, and we would routinely meet up. I don't know, a few times a year and just sit and talk about poetry and have coffee and have very intense conversations. And he would give me really incredible advice about poetry that stayed with me. But there are a couple of points where one, I got this psychic reading, right, when I was at the James Merrill house from this woman, and the voices told me, they said, she was like, do you know someone named Joseph? And I was like, Larry Joseph. And they were like, he's not well right now. He needs to take better care of himself. So then I emailed Larry Joseph and I was like, listen, this is really weird, but apparently, like, you need to take better care of yourself. And he wrote me back. He's like, I just had shingles. And then, do you remember that, Larry? Yeah. And then another time I was basically sitting around feeling super crappy about my poems. And he just called me out of the blue and and just gave me all this advice about my speaker and my book, my last book, and the situation of speaker. So Larry, I love you. And I'm really excited to be here with you. It's truly an honor. So I'm going to start off, I'm just going to read poems actually from the manuscript I'm working on, which I wish was as fastidious as my poems used to be, but life has intervened. And it's not, I'm not allowed, the amount of time I used to spend on poetry has really shrunk. But I'm going to read a poem called Lottery of Eyes. And in some ways, I think my poems are a little bit more autobiographical than they used to be, right? It isn't so much like that insane speaker, still insane, but this is called Lottery of Eyes. My daughter learns how to read with eyes I can't claim to know the color of, though they started out gray, then turned green, and were one day blue. And naysayers who said they'd turn brown were wrong. They are like leaves, to be sure, but they are mostly like the colors that move windward over the surfaces of lakes, little scuffles, or scallops or shells of tiny waves combed across a brilliant surface. I cannot answer yes or no when my daughter asks if her eyes are green. Can you not look inside your own eyes to find what color they are? Too bad our eyes cannot speak the colors they feel, be changing things, and accompany the brow and temperament. When my daughter drops into the book, she leaves. She turns off by turning on. Her face cancels all reward. It recalls the time when she was points only, 3 dots on a sonogram, a picture below which a nurse assigned the word toes, because she had already learned to disappear. Or maybe we know what we learn before we learn it. When she first appeared, she was not unlike a photocopy that gets caught in the machine and frustrates or gets shredded in its making. Who are you and how? I just lost this document, which was an entire poem, which was not unlike my daughter's twin, who would know by now how to read if she did not run red down my inner leg while I was reading. How was it that I was able in the first place to give birth to a pair of eyes? Giving birth is the opposite of being swallowed. Trying to make that match catch, kindle a being, impossible as scooping the eye's net through a fish tank stocked with the alphabet. Who knows what and who you will be lucky enough to catch? One fell out of the bubblegum machine of my uterus, a blood rush sucked into the godless mouth of the toilet. But this one is sitting across from me right now, reading a book. And even tonight, she is still taken up with the lesson of eyes. Are hers gray or green? I typically dismiss this exchange as an exercise in vanity, because what a miracle it is, the things that eyes do. I made this pair inside me. I can't say exactly what color they are, but they started out gray. Then everyone said they'd turn brown as soon as a moon passed over a cloud. But then they held the green mirror of a leaf before them, and one day they were blue. But mostly they're lichen gray. I wonder what her twin would have been like. That set of green baubles in my girl's head, or another set that peers out from behind lenses. A pair of stairs that smarts like a wound. And the next poem I'm gonna, it's funny because I wanted to write a poem about the experience of watching my daughter learn how to read, and that was how I got at it. Was sort of overhearing her. You know how people who have like blue or green eyes are always like, oh, my eyes change. with like what the, that conversation. This poem is called Ice Cream in February, and it is set in Staten Island. Sitting in this car like a worn out century, an ashtray on wheels, my fingers directing its wheels into this lot, tears creeping out their ends to lacquer the steering wheel. I've positioned myself to face this faded storefront without the foresight to see it's what was formerly the Babies R Us that once swung its doors open before my feet when all I bought was diapers and my arms hauled plastic bags freighted with formula and pacifiers, and the weight of the car seat hung from the crook of my arm, suspending the jewel that was my daughter, whose cries were like ribbons at midnight. I was always in the market for pacifiers, diapers, and baby formula. I bought cloth bibs by the dozens because, just like I got smart about breast milk, I got smart about all the spitting up. If I just kept a bib on the kid and swapped them out every time the formula dribbled up out the baby mouth, I wouldn't need to change the whole outfit. Baby hacks, I guess you could call them. Mother's Day, I happened to be in there because I was always in there, stocking up on disposable diapers and teething rings molded out from plastic from a factory in China. And while checking out, the nice young man I saw practically on a daily basis said, "Happy Mother's Day. I hope your husband got you something nice." And in the way I had back then, one eye always a squint, circles practically drawn with markers beneath my eyes, hands trembling, not because I had to climb 50 steps to get to my apartment with the 50-pound car seat protecting the 15-pound baby, but because I only got to sleep in 2.5-hour increments and was therefore actually insane and even hallucinating. I said, my Mother's Day present to myself is that I'm not married. Now, Babies R Us is shuttered forever. Now I dip the plastic spoon into the frost and eat a barrel's worth of sugar that will reach down to my blood as a stranger offers his hand to the old lady to help her off the bench at the bus stop. Today, my daughter orders a pumpkin spice latte, and I know I am once again alone in the world, as I have been since I began. Spared that loneliness for approximately 10 years, while she did require my assistance for mostly everything, mostly food. I got used to being with someone, but now I'm dissolving. The drive-by sky in this nowhere lot is worse than a policeman fattening himself on baked goods inside the heated cubicle of his vehicle's interior. As I eat an ice cream cone in winter, tears creeping out the ends of my fingers, my one lost mitten somewhere on some road behind me, while buses drag their plumes of exhaust along the 3-lane boulevard, and all the stores heave a sigh and roll over onto their sides to die their brick and mortar death before the president of a land in which I never requested citizenship. And the dying woman underneath a blanket at the ferry station curls up inside my ear, murmuring that she forgives me for the morning I almost dropped $1 into her cup, but stopped when I only found a 20 in my wallet. And I did not have the time or compassion to break it at the coffee shop because I did not have the time. The best part of being alone is being alone to enjoy an ice cream cone, but I'm starting to sound like someone who thrives on the simple pleasures, which just isn't true. I've always despised those women who think trespass is sneaking an extra chocolate or hoarding a favorite cookie. Come on, bitches. Let's fall down some stairs. No one ever calls me to see how my day at work is going, and I'm always hauling the trash out to the end of the drive. And at this point in my life, I just look like an old woman to people who drive by, which is better, I guess, than being harassed. But why can't you get something in between a leer and a disgusted smirk for having a body that carries you to the mailbox to find out there is no mail? Hardly read any of these poems ever. Um, so I'm going to read a poem called Starfuckers. And this is, I'm going to read two more poems because these are kind of long. Starfuckers. Beer, lotto, wine, cigs is a sign before a doorway I walk through to buy a bottle of water, is a hole I fall some stairs down into in order to buy a bottle of water for $3. And how can I not succeed given the wealth I am being offered? The shop features two old men sitting in their dirt by the register who laugh at charging me $1 for a banana. I'm sure they'll have lots to joke about once I turn to walk back out, cross the street to climb up to the room in which I am thinking about Leda and the Swan. And what I can't get over is how the search results always direct me to the same object of focus. I am wondering how it would feel to travel down a swan's throat as a water reed, and if the fluid neck's vertebrae are not unlike a snake's, and is there a coiling that a swan undertakes should it wish to be your companion, say, weaving its neck around your arm thrice before tucking its arm to rest beneath your breast? The search terms for swan swallowing allow me to consider that the words reverse mean to suck a penis, and just below there is a video of two happy swans eating lunch. Would Marianne Moore not have adored the internet? She was never one of those girls who made goo-goo eyes at guys. She never traipsed late night the grounds of some writers' conference, never slipped out from the poet's room. Instead, she was counting her fragments, fossils, filaments, and syllables under her own bright light recklessly and methodically as old Chinese women go at mahjong in the park. She was wise in that she was always only about her art. She didn't get mixed up in a domestic situation. No man ever grabbed her by the neck because she insisted he turn his music down. The baby is sleeping. She solved that problem before I could start by having no babies, no men, only allowing her preoccupation with craft to balloon itself up inside the room of her life, her attraction to chinched china, vital and fatal, as one critic closed his piece like a beak. I think I rarely think of more, but realize I must think more of more than I realize. She had no messy umbrage, but she, like Leda, sat on wonders, no doubt. She could not have pretended not to, not now in our age of sex videos and selfies. Hands feel like rubber on the neck that holds the head up, screaming to turn the music down because the baby is sleeping. I mean, the neck feels the hands as if they were not attached to the man. Hands, however, do not have brains, do not arrive upon one's throat of their own accord. It's not the swan that is violent, nor is it the man. Rather, this brand of excitement is the liberty of gods. Yeats's version is all over the police blotter. Do not arrive. Wait, what? It's all over the police blotter. But I wonder which is worse depicted, force or coercion. The swan in so many pictures poses as companion, a pet, or in one, an amateur gynecologist peers curious between the splayed legs of a woman supine, as if prepared to use its beak as a forceps. Bishop is another one who probably saw such images and, restrained as she was, made the decision to make no mention of it. The thought of some swan disguised as God shimmying up to me makes me nauseous. God posing as a sort of arm candy, my daughter's favorite purse silver with a small swan. The notions crawl out manholes to reach for my ankles just before I step up to enter the store, in which I buy my bottle of water from the old men. They appear unwashed, the kind of old men we consider abandoned, luckless, spent, no kind and grateful woman to look after them. Their table is covered with cards and bills and whirls with their laughter shared like lovers. The store offers more of what I really do want, wine and cigarettes, but my brain is ailing me, and I cannot recall which night I lasted late, slipped inside a pine tree to hide and pretend I was never one of those girls. I got lost the second his hand appeared on my knee. What those girls were looking for, I wonder. We used to call them starfuckers, when all they wanted was to close the gap between teacher and student, God and mortal, all those swans walking around smoking their own poems. The Ladas wanted what they got, so it seemed to me as I walked buckling over drunk back to my room. They must be successful selling $3 bottles of water to parched drunks just flush from lotto winnings. Only in that state of delirium would a reasonable human frequent the store. It has everything I want and nothing I want anymore. I don't drink anymore, but I can't say I don't cry anymore. I cry more. Maybe I was a sort of star fucker too, inside that conifer, thinking myself a little god disguised behind needle and sap, too good for the regular fucking of people enjoying an evening, taking things as usual too seriously, unable as always to just relax. It's weird to me that I still have the body I have then now, all of its digits intact. The problem with the story is the binary nature of the interpretation. It was either rape or pleasure. Neither equation fails to surprise or repulse me. The pair of hands that grab my neck are 100 towns back. The baby, a girl who sees the flimsy literalness of a myth. And the girl I was is still in the pines, maybe, lurking and turning into her own weird swan of that swamp, chucking up weeds dredged up from the silty deep to tug them down the long trail of throat, miles and miles, its dark, supple eternity where all the ghosts go. Even the girls who hated me as I hated them, despite being poets too. I realize now we were all Ladas. All our tongues were all stretched and pulled deep inside that swan's dark belly. I thought to wipe more right out of this poem until my own mother on the phone, listening as mothers do, sighed, "Oh, the one who wore the tricorn." So, I got involved in this project with an artist in Maine. They had this thing where you worked with an artist. I worked with a painter who's actually originally from Spain, and she was really into Leda and the Swan. And so I ended up writing that poem, and then she did not like it one bit because she thought it was going to really disturb the audience. So she did me a huge favor there. All right, so I'm trying to figure out what's a good poem to like end on, and I think I'm going to keep it brief because I'm excited to hear Larry.
Kate, just be
You know what?
careful. Your microphone is picking up some of the pages turning.
Oh, really? That's terrible.
Yeah, so just
Sorry.
like keep them away from the microphone when you're reading.
I'll try. I'm not even going to touch the page. I'm touching the pages now, perversely. Okay, so I'm going to read. I have a series of guzzles that are for a friend I lost. He's not dead. He's someone who I stopped being friends with. And so I have a series of guzzles, and this is called Friendship Guzzle. This will be the last one I read. You can't hold on to everybody like a bag of grapes won't promise every grape is attached to the vine. I should know not all friendships prove their promise of wine always after the party, or letters that will feel their way, miraculous, into the mailbox years later. Friends fall out, fall off, discreet in their nudges toward the darker ends of the hallways. I've done it myself, dropped the letter into the slot, shipped it off without a stamp and no return address. Nowadays, we call it ghosting, which is oddly clean in meaning, and that it suggests friends who abandon us on doorsteps will return to haunt us, though never in the actual flesh. Years later, I'm desperate enough to try and refriend you on Facebook on my phone, walking off a red eye into the sunrise. You have not disappeared entirely. Jot off a response to say, "No shit, I'll be in touch soon." Remember when I set you up with my friend and you told me she asked you to come on her face? Who does that kind of shit? I asked, when I should have asked why you were telling me that shit. And moreover, why would you then humiliate the woman your friend set you up with by leaving her at the train station hours before her departure? And why did her predicament feel unsettlingly familiar? You paid the bill so you could choose the restaurant. You always drove. Don't support the hypothesis that women prefer to be treated like shit. It's funny. I think I was the first, certainly the only one. I must have been the only woman with whom you were ever actually friends. I don't dangle like a modifier. I'll hang in the air all these years later, breath placed on your window pane. It's me, Marvin, your old friend. Thanks.
Woohoo. Oh, thank you. That's great. John, do you want to set up the break, and and then I'll do the the money part.
Yeah, here I'm right now. I just pasted the link to the Fundly, and maybe you can navigate
I'm
the
bringing it
various
up right
stages.
now.
Kate was talking before about how awesome it would be to drink a martini in the KGB bar again. And if somebody does what's the highest level called again? They could buy
So 15 we think is a very reasonable, like, manageable amount of money to have like 2 drinks waiting for you. But if you get up to patron at $50,000, you will have a $45,000 bar tab.
That would cover at least one season of KGB for I don't know.
Are you going to give us a link to this in the chat? Oh yeah, you did already.
Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah, so you have a link to that. And then also, if you'd like to give at your own, you're like, I don't like being told that I can give this amount or that amount. You can also, just scan this, and this is the Venmo, and so this will also support.
Oh really?
Yeah, like if you're at the bar tonight, even if you just want to throw a buck or two as a tip to the, so.
And then you guys go shopping with this, right?
Naturally, yeah.
Clothes shopping, no doubt.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We don't get any. We do not get a cut. This all goes to support KGB. John, Jada, Matt, and I work only for dreams and love. That's all.
Dreams and love.
We get paid in dreams and love.
All right, so why don't we give everybody 2 minutes? You can figure out if you want to do one of those things, and then we will just grab another drink or whatever, and then pretend you're at the bar, I guess, and then we'll see you.
I'm gonna go get a drink.
Yeah. Go. I have my drink gets ghostly,
and we can
because of the screen share thing.
And I don't know if Kate can still hear us, but Kate, there are a ton of comments about your poems in the chat, which I don't know, maybe you should read, but boy, your new material is really something, and I feel like everybody agrees that we cannot wait to read it in print. I don't know why I said that to her when she's not at the screen anymore. I'll be right.
Because we're always paying attention. We're always on point.
Because Jason's recording too.
Because we're recording, so there'll be a record of this. But I don't know. I mean, I put in the chat earlier. If you wanted, if anyone wasn't with us last week, as tonight we had an amazing reading, and it'll premiere next Tuesday. And so what we do is every you come to the reading on Monday night, and then Tuesday night the previous week's reading becomes available. So I put that in the chat if you want to watch Don Lundy Martin and Carl Phillips, who are absolutely on fire. We're putting them on YouTube, but they're like, I think our highest view count is like 16. I don't think we're getting like, we haven't gone viral, I guess would be the litote. The understatement would be, we have yet to go viral with one of our readings.
I could always probably do like a screen video of it as a preview and put it on the story, on the Insta story. So it would get more, we probably gain more traction. If people miss one, or they're like avid, viewers, and they're like, okay, I missed one or something like that. So
that'll be great. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
I tell my students to stay away from YouTube. I tell my students that YouTube is a sewer. And I'll often have students, when they find something good on YouTube, they're like, look, professor, look what I found in the sewer. And I'm like, sometimes people drop their wedding rings and you do find something nice.
So when I sent you that video of the girl reading bad internet poetry, she was in the sewer and I was in the sewer.
But okay, but this is when we pull out our Oscar Wilde, that all of us are in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. But that was truly, that was the video you sent me was in, you should put the link for that.
It was heinous.
That was, I could not believe, because like he was talking about his like it was bad erotic poetry, and this guy had a lot of poems where his penis was a spider.
Yeah,
like
a spider penis.
And it was like,
I don't want to insult this crowd and insult this amazing reading from Kate Marvin with that work. So I'll put the link.
With what word?
Yeah, literally in the sewer.
No, I'm just like, that's what I'm so literal. I'm just like, that's interesting. The speaker's in a sewer.
Yeah, no, those were the, because like when Jada said it to me, I was like, oh, it's so easy to make fun of poets, you know, like, oh, we're such an easy mark. But then I watched and I was like, no, like this, like the spider penis was hysterically funny. Do you remember there was this like a long time ago?
Just a bad metaphor.
Oh, just a baffling metaphor. Like,
like that these two things are not, you know.
Because it spins webs. Like I don't understand at all.
But there is this running joke on like on social media about how male writers write women. So it kind of goes with the bad male, well, mostly male erotic poetry that like the person was reviewing. So it was so funny. I can send you both videos, but yeah.
No, you should totally.
The women have to start writing men like really badly. Right?
Yeah.
The erotica of like the spider penis and stuff like that, just to get them back.
That should be a B movie. Like that's like a subject of a really good sci-fi movie.
Jada, did you see the one that was a picture of the protagonist from the Queen's Gambit, and she's sitting there when she's like drinking and smoking in the house?
I saw that.
Yeah, and it said a man's
how men write women at their lowest.
Yeah, at rock bottom or something like that.
And she's like gorgeous smoking a cigarette. I have to watch that show.
That's a great show.
Mm-hmm. It's fun.
And read the book.
That would be virtuous. It's not about chess, by the way. Like everyone who's like, it's not about chess, and it's like, did anyone think it was about chess? Like,
it's a metaphor, is it not?
It's kind of about chess.
No, I think it's about chess. Yeah.
Well, the show was about chess. I don't know about the book.
Apparently, even like a lot of people who play chess online, like there's a huge spike in people using the Queen's Gambit as an opening since then. But maybe that's
no. Chess sets have skyrocketed in sales since the Queen's Gambit. Like people are going nuts for chess because of Queen's Gambit. If you follow Nkosi Nkoleke on Twitter, who's read at KGB, like he's all in on chess and chess openings.
Yeah,
but I mean, like,
sounds.
Although women,
right, it's not fully about. It's not like you don't learn anything about chess. So.
When are we gonna have like a poet's gambit? Like we need like a show that does what like the Queen's Gambit did for chess, but like for poetry.
But there's so many movies that are already like about writers and like how pathetic they are. It's like what's that show? You know that show?
Yeah.
Good.
Like that character was like, she was a poet or a fiction writer or something like that. She was in an MFA program, and it was just like so depressing to watch.
There's a TV show where people are in an MFA program?
Yeah, it's about it's basically about a serial killer, and his victim is his leading writer.
Well, that makes sense.
It's pretty vicious.
It's actually very good.
I always thought that you could make a really great horror movie set at Yaddo or Breadless.
Oh my God. I don't know. McDowell is kind of, to me, was like more of a horror movie with like just having the talks at dinner.
I mean, I guess it would
all
sort
the name dropping.
It's all terrible.
Like,
Yeah,
kill me now.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was more Agatha Christie.
Has anyone seen Shirley?
Oh, the Shirley Jackson bio?
Yeah.
No, is it good?
It's pretty good.
I love Shirley Jackson.
Yeah, and I think Elizabeth Moss plays Shirley Jackson.
There's something coming out next month about Billie Holiday.
Yeah, I saw the trailer. It's really amazing.
But anyway, I don't know. What do we think? We ready?
I think
Larry,
we're ready.
You
I'm
got
excited.
you got enough books behind you? I'll put them wherever they fit from now on. Okay, well, so I don't think I mentioned earlier, but this is year 24, season 47, and episode 2 of KGB Monday Night Poetry. We really obviously hate not being in the bar, but sometimes it does give us access to other poets and stuff. So we encourage everyone to come back for our other readings this season too. At the end, we'll announce what the rest of them are. Last week was Carl Phillips and Don Lundy Martin, and but it's a pretty fantastic lineup. But tonight's is as fantastic as any of them. I love both these poets so much, and thanks also. I see in the audience we've got Don and Gerald, Jonathan, Laura, Sabrina, all the kind of regulars. So thank you guys for coming. At any rate, Larry Joseph is a poet capable of communicating the full magnitude of the imagery surrounding him. His New York City is sort of like Wallace Stevens' Hartford, where Larry Joseph describes the sky above New York. One deeply feels the blue inside the blue, the red inside the red, or the sound of a distant foghorn. He's capable of bulletproof persuasion, rational and humanist, and composes lyrical cadences that are both mystified and assured and fully gripped by the passing moment, reaching deeply affecting plateaus that the poet knows he must move on from because he's also a realist. He's also capable of exacting social criticism that is deeply skeptical, but nevertheless always seized with wonder. He's one of the great philosopher poets, meshing clarity of thought with cinematic imagery. His use of color can be positively hallucinogenic, teeming with the present, like a Van Gogh painting. His work then feels very rooted in history, in linear time, as well as in the kaleidoscopic blur of all the skies at once. He's also a KGB frequenter and someone I have missed dearly during this pandemic. Cate spoke earlier about getting advice from Larry Joseph, and Matt and I have been lucky to have that many times. He's also, I should mention before reading his proper bio, one of the great people to sit and drink and discuss poetry with late into the evening. So Larry is educated at the University of Michigan, the University of Cambridge, and the University of Michigan Law School. Lawrence Joseph is the author of 5 previous books of poetry, 2 books of prose, a novel, and The Game Changed, essays and other prose. Among his awards are fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Guggenheim Foundation. He's Tonelli Professor of Law at St. John's University School of Law and has also taught creative writing at Princeton. He lives in New York City. This is Lawrence Joseph.
You have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. There you go.
Okay. So everybody can hear me now? Okay. Thank you. Thank all of you. It's just really moving to be here. You're all among the favorite people in my life and favorite poets in my life. And I've been part of this from the beginning many times, and I miss it terribly. It's one of the things I miss terribly about being away from the KGB bar. And when Matt, asked, told me I'd be reading with Cate, it's very thrilling. I've never read with Cate before, and I've always wanted to. And they're both such a dear friend and just a really wonderful, great poet. Poetry has captured me from the first time that I've read it. I'm going to read several poems tonight. I recently published, or Farrar Straus published, a selected poems of mine. It came out in March, and it was not a new and selected, it included prior poems from my selections from my books. And I'll be reading poems from my books, mostly from my last book, So Where Are We? And then I'll be reading a couple of new poems. in a post-bubble credit collapse environment. No clouds now nearer to Brooklyn Bridge than the bridge is to the Heights. Half a block east, barefoot on shards of glass, a towel wrapped around his waist, shaving cream on the left side of his face. A block south, beside a fire hydrant, a leg found severed at the knee. Internal or external, what difference does it make? I shake the snow from my coat, take off my gloves, set them on the counter. I step back onto Spring Street and on Greenwich start downtown. Sight and sound reconfigured, details, truths, colors, and shapes round out the aesthetic. Things changed and unchanged, not just in abstract ways. This young man, yellow pants, undershirt, stands eating from a garbage bin, patches of ice on the East River Esplanade. One World Trade Center's structural steel has reached the 52nd of 104 stories. The light in a pink and a coral, moving through pink and violet, scumbled over pink, turning red on violet. That was yesterday's twilight. This afternoon, white and gray and hot. Is everything between 6 banks and everything else connected? Does the old money ultimately determine the new? It's really, really tight out there. How can you not think about it, is her answer, while seated on the sidewalk at the corner of Wall and Broad, across from the illuminated stock exchange, with backpack and smartphone, mineral water, sleeping bag, bananas, figs, police vans parked on Nassau, helicopters circling overhead, her presence digitally monitored. In a post-bubble credit collapse environment, 350% interest rates on payday loans and the multi-trillion-dollar market in credit default swaps are history. Submoron, the assistant district attorney bursts into laughter, drops his coin into the payphone, then goes and orders retaliation from the tombs. Sunday's forecast, the high tide to coincide with Irene's heavy rains and hurricane force winds. Sea level to rise 4-5 feet at the Battery. Who talks like that? The Narrows are strips of yellow and jade, Verrazano Bridge, silver, horizontal lines here. And here, someone alone, afraid, in tears, sad, sunken eyes, emaciated body. And here, the speed of a slap, the strain under the skin. And this murky and absurdly massive figure bent double under an unknown burden. And this bandaged wound, smudged contours, body and mind breached. And I thought this, waking early, looking out, the too magnificent to be described unclouded sky, night still in the west, the eastern horizon crimson melting into blue, light solid packed being forged without apotheosis, Governor's Island, series of waves where the two rivers meet. Who talks like that? I talk like that. Blinding point of light in which everything converges, everything is revealed. Dense constellations of abject suffering, hellholes, hell time, integrated into what's configured. Light not only looked at, but the light we've looked with. In common with Byzantine mosaics, iconic, chromatic, glowing, as if caught by the sunlit sky. Revised, added to, a separate palette kept for each poem. In the present, a presence, here. A man who watches the woman he loves walking toward him in Battery Park, in patches of light, in the birch leaf green, the harbor bright blue, in pockets of deep green shade. This is a poem in 10 parts. They're all short parts, entitled In Parentheses. 1. As I said, I'm a lawyer. Technically speaking, is a head blown to pieces by a smart bomb a beheading? 2. Infinitely compressible, yet expendable, time and curved space. In the preface to Lucretius's first book of De Rerum Natura is a tribute to Venus. In the last book, a description of the plague. 3. Estimated 1,000 to 2,000 militia, gangs really, of 15 to 3,000 armed killers and separate overlapping networks, difficult to differentiate. And now this, to quote an anonymous State Department source, what no one could have predicted, this phenomenon's, the caliphate's rise. Nothing since the triumph of the Vandals in Roman North Africa, this sudden, this incomprehensible. 4. In the techno-capital sphere, absolute principles of profit growth, of value accumulation, the absolute freedom to recombine the production of raw materials into virtual information in spaces of time, info time. 5. A theological political fragment, a mythographical scriptural text, and sorrow, to understand the meaning of sorrow. Saint Sorrow, the addressee of my avowal, Saint Sorrow's stern vigil, necessary to keep. 6. Hyperviolence is the word, of epic proportions, a species thing, the point at which violence becomes ontology, these endless ambitious experiments in destruction, a species grief. 7. Quite often, almost daily, in fact, I have strong impressions of eternity. My ancestors are there too in the shadows. My mother, my father, grandmothers, grandfathers, whom I refuse to let perish, whispering to me to be careful. 8. What's that about? Someone I heard say that to say that Hispanics are East Asian is sort of like saying that Arabs are white. 9. Hear that? That man's face being stepped on, skull being cracked by the baton stick, head slammed against the concrete edge, blood in his eyes, body limp, in the process now of being handcuffed. 10. I'm speaking of a law now, understand, that point at which bodies locked in cages become ontology, the point at which structures of cruelty, force, war become ontology. The analog is what I believe in, the reconstruction of the phenomenology of perception, not according to a machine, more now for the imagination to affix to than ever before. This is a a poem entitled Visions of Labor, which I think I've read at the KGB bar. I think I've read several of these at the KGB bar. Visions of Labor. I will have writings written all over it in human words, wrote Blake. A running form pounds Blake, shouting, whirling his arms, his eyes rolling, whirling like flaming cartwheels. Put it this way, in this language, a blow in the small of the back from a rifle butt, the crack of a blackjack on a skull, face beaten to a pulp, punched in the nose with a fist, glasses flying off, fucking wobbly wop hit him again for me, rifle barrel slammed against the knees, so much blood in the eyes, rain and the night and the shooting pain, all up and down the spine, can't see. Put it this way, in the sense of smell is an acrid odor of scorched metal, in the sense of sound, the roaring of blowtorches. Put it in this language, labor's value is abstract value, abstracted into space in which a milling machine cutter cuts through the hand, the end of her thumb nearly sliced off, metal shavings driven in, rapidly infected. Put it at this point, the point at which capital is most inhumane, unsentimental, out of control. The quantity of human labor in the digital manufacture of a product is progressing toward the economic value of zero. The maintenance and monitoring of new cybernetic processes occupied by fungible, commodified labor in a form of indentured servitude. Static model, dynamic model, alternate contract environments, enterprise size and labor market functions, equilibrium characterization, elasticity of response to productivity shocks. The question in this third industrial revolution is who owns and controls the data. That's what we're looking at. Labor cheap, replaceable, self-replicating, marginal, contracted out into smaller and smaller units. Them, hordes of them, of depleted economic social value who don't count in any situation in anyone's eyes and won't count ever, no matter what. The truth of that, sooner than later, one way or another, they will simply die off. In Hanover Square, a freezing dawn. Inside bronze doors, the watchman sips bourbon and black coffee from a paper cup. Sees a drunk or drugged hedge fund boy step over a passed out body. Logic of exploitation. Logic of submission. Alienation. Eyes fixed on mediated screens in semiotic labor flow. How many generations between the age of slavery of these states and ours? Makers we of perfectly contemplated machines. And then two recent poems, relatively recent, which will be in my next book. First is entitled In This Phase in the 58th American Presidenciad. And the term presidenciad was used by Walt Whitman. A presidenciad is not a presidency, it's an administration, it's a government. And this is in this phase of the 58th American Presidenciad, which will come to an end on Wednesday at noon. There's a reference to a Whitman poem to the states to identify the 16th 17th, or 18th Presidenciad, which are the Presidenciads before the Civil War. In this phase, in the 58th American Presidenciad, in these states, in this 58th Presidenciad, in this phase of the American experiment, acts of systemic oligarchic thievery crushed into the body of a child in a chain link cage in a row of yellow tents in an old warehouse concentration camp, clutching a copy of her mother's ID card. Amped up signals, the stakes high, intensified. Whitman's to the states to identify the 16th, 17th, or 18th Presidenciad. What deepening twilight, scum floating atop of the waters. What a filthy Presidenciad. Is that the president? Precious, preening, blonde cotton candy hair, con man. Swastikas are his aura. Capable, very capable of changing into whatever he wants, he says, lips puckered. His bombs, they're beautiful bombs. His generals are beautiful. Beautiful, the word he uses to describe missiles he sells to Saudi Arabia and Israel. His own hell he owns in his own shit. Feet of lackey weasels clamped onto his pot-bellied stomach, teeth stuck in his puffed up jaw. Equities levitating higher, capital captive carbine dioxide unleashed, prison construction outsourced to party regular racketeers. No, we can't restore our civilization with someone else's babies. No, they're not innocent. They're not people. They're animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and a rate like never before into foster care or wherever. Sing-song voice, almost a whisper. His eyes, are they eyes? Are dead. And as Attorney General, is it his name really? Ku Klux Kluger III invokes not just law, but God's law. Paul, Epistle to the Romans 13, God's will, the divine order of things, demands government agencies treat the poor like inventory. Identities lost, irreparable damage to the structure of brains. Hatred, their brand. They love to hate, to make their money and to hate. Killing. Is jubilate a word? They jubilate at it. Killer robots, drones, artificial intelligence, powered ships, tanks, planes and guns, in air and on sea, undersea and on land. The future lethal autonomous weapon systems, LAWS. In this phase, in the 58th American Presidenciad. And two more poems. One is a poem in three short parts. Body, history, evil, God, human. 1. So it is. The chaos contracted in an unfolding scene in 5 sentences. Body, history, evil, God, human. 2. But what ideas and what facts? Inside the sun, the heat is sucking the soil's moisture, A blue and red Diet Pepsi logo is imprinted on a lobster's claw. Flashes of lightning, steady rains, complicating the identification of bodies charred to bones. Town of Paradise, a fire zone. Anywhere is everywhere. And in another intensity, the great migration of peoples. Ecocidal, petro-capitalist qualitative destruction. Every cubic meter of the planet's air, inch of its surface, drop of water affected. And now, endless wars and proliferating sorrows. And the last poem is the last poem of my selected books, my selected poems, which is the last poem in So Where Are We? I'd like to thank everybody again. Thank you, John, for that wonderful introduction. I miss you. I miss all of you a lot. And thank you for having me this evening, 2 days before, one day now, a day and a half before the ending of the 58th American Presidentiad. What more is there to say? December mild, deep January cold, sunlight filtered through blue haze, yellow the grass closely pressed, patches of dirt, in red and lavender twilight, a tugboat in the harbor clearing the ice. And those circles in which all heaven breaks loose, touched by who she is, by what she wills, in the envisioned heart, inmost issues take the form of a credo. The God to whom an account must be rendered, my dead to whom I pray, as I in turn pray, the life once theirs is transfigured. What a story to tell. Violence from the terror felt, violence in the suffering, violence in the mind, collectively modified, escalated to maximum speed. So what more is there to say? Many times the mass of the sun, solar mass, is spiraling into space-time, radiating energy and gravitational waves. The edges of the island soft in the black-gray sky. On this side of the battery, near the ferry, a small bird's footprints here in the snow. New moon, mauve cloud, sea level higher than normal. The harbor again, green and gray, punctuated by waves lashing about. Thickening the mists this early morning, repeated sounds of foghorns we hear from afar. Thank you.
And I have with me, oh, wait, so I have to turn off the, so you can actually see it. Okay, this is where I really am. So the KGB Bar Book of Poems, and this is from, I think, 1999. And we do have the Larry Joseph section, and there's the Star Black photograph from a century ago.
Well,
although it doesn't seem that long, does it?
The pandemic's aged me, you know. I mean, it's.
You show that again, please. Hang on, let me. Oh yeah. I think, you know, I have to say, Larry, I think that you look great. I love your beard.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's a pandemic beard. It marks the pandemic. But,
looks good.
It's flattering.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Larry, what a citizen of the universe you are. I mean, shoot this reading out into a time capsule and let's impress some aliens. I mean, this was marvelous.
No, the time capsule, Matt, the intended time capsule. I have a poem. It's basically for poets 50 years from now. In other words, to let them know what we were going through, and that we were still writing poems, and we were doing everything that poets do during all difficult, from the beginning of world history, during every possible horrible situation. For beauty, I don't need to elaborate to this, all of you, the themes to which we all deal with in our hearts and our souls. But there will be poets 50 years from now. And that's who I intend these poems to be written for. And for them to make sense and for them to understand what we did during this time, regardless of what everybody else was doing. And during this time, it was the poets that were doing this. So that's the time capsule that I want. I want the time capsule to be the time space within the individual poems.
Yeah, poems are time capsules, right?
Yeah, they are time capsules. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not time capsules in physical capsules where somebody digs up. They're time capsules of language, or of speech, of the way we talked, the way we felt, and everything. And that's the way, yeah, it's a great metaphor, actually. So, yeah.
I keep thinking of Mandelstam.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And Akamatova, you know?
Yeah,
Start floating through my mind.
Well, those are, you know, among the many, many important poets. Yeah, I mean, they didn't know what was going to happen. And so they were writing this, and, you know, all the poets that the poems they wrote are lost for whatever reasons, destroyed. And those that manage to survive and those that don't. But it isn't that I expect the work to be read in 50 years, but I project that forward 50 years. That's what I do in my imagination. And I realized when I put my selected poems together that I've always been doing that. I've been doing that when I first started putting poems together and for my first book.
When is the collected coming out?
The what?
The collected, when is it out?
It's a selected, and it's already out. It came out in March.
Oh,
and,
okay.
It's been out since March. It came out right, the pub date was March 17. I think that was the day of the lockdown.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was an uneventful March. Yeah, there wasn't much
going on. It was an eventful March.
Yeah, you might have missed it. You know?
Yeah.
I think like poetry, like the thing that makes me most excited about poetry and like all literature is just how it operates in time, and it sort of like, you know, like undoes time. So you think about writing toward all these people who are, I mean, Whitman did that, right?
Yeah.
Brooklyn Ferry, he's like writing to you. He's like,
yeah.
I'm standing where like you're standing, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that I also feel like I'm also writing backwards. I'm sort of writing all through time, and I'm in conversation, like, or I like to pretend I am anyway.
You're in conversation with Marianne Moore in that poem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eugenio Montali says that poets are in conversation with other poets, not only the poets of their time, but the poets that they communicate with in the past and then in the future, but in the past. And we all carry the poets that we read and find with us all the time. And we open that up, the real poets for me are constantly opening up to anything they can. I mean, to widen and learn from other poets, because it's from other poets that we learn. We learn how to do it. I mean, that's how we do it. We learn how to do it for one another. And that's exactly what it should be.
But what a fantastic impulse, Larry, to have to be writing towards a generation of future poets. I think so many of us look at the past and we write from the past or to the past. I just think that's a fantastic and really unique impulse as a poet that you have.
Well, thank you.
And on Wednesday, we'll have the youngest inaugural poet ever.
Who's reading?
Amanda Gorman.
It's like 22.
Yeah, she's 22 years old.
Sure.
Yeah. Well,
I thought "Good for You" would be a great title of a poetry volume, just for somebody. If somebody wants to keep it or own it or take it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was thinking when Cate mentioned Mandelstam and just like what Nadezhda Mandelstam did, like people don't I don't think people know that like Stalin during the Stalinist period, they would actually reprint loved poets to make them bad. The reason Nadezhda Mandelstam had to memorize the entirety of his oeuvre and keep it in her head until the thaw was that they would actually publish bad versions of poets to disgrace them.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine?
Like that's I can't like that's unbelievable. Like that have someone actually make your poems worse than they already are. Yeah.
I've had this situation a few times hunting down poems by KGB poets and that where you end up on a name that is very common and somebody has also, I don't know, at the age of 18 published some poems in that name, and you read this and you're like, oh my gosh, could this be, Sarah Johnson poet or something? But
James Merrill worked very hard to buy up all the copies of the self-published book that his father put out for him when he was 16.
I bet he did.
He tried really hard to get all those back.
Is when you have students do presentations on a poet and they've found that poet's poems, like they haven't gotten the real poems by the professional poet, and it's something off like Poem
Hunter, yeah.
Yeah.
And the robot voice reads it.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually was listening to the robot voice read some Paul Celan poems the other day, and I was like, oh my God, that poem is so fucking good. Like, it sounds good even in robot voice. Count the almonds.
I'm going to stop the recording. Oh, shoot. But not before I tell you that next week we will have Alan Michael Parker and Laura Cronk.
Yay.
Yes.
And it is the exact same time. It is the exact same link. If you got here, you come back in the exact same way. And we can keep talking, but I am ending the recording.
Bye.